All right, Alexander, let's talk about this issue between China and Australia. And we had an interesting, kind of a disgusting tweet, actually, from China with that photo, that image. It was disgusting. I mean, okay, we have some revelations as to what happened with the Australian military in Afghanistan as well, which is really bad. But I just don't understand why China decided to pour salt on the wounds of that. I mean, the whole thing seems like it's the Australian military got caught, and they need to deal with that. And the Chinese getting involved in such a way just doesn't make anything good. And then of course now you have Australia's response, Morrison's response to that image, and the whole thing continues to escalate. So a very poor diplomatic situation.
Well, that is entirely right. Can I just say quickly? I mean, I've seen the picture. This is a picture that was tweeted by the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman. It's lead spokesman, the person who actually goes out there and, meets the press and speaks to people and sets out the views of China. And the Chinese media have claimed that this is a cartoon. It's not actually a cartoon as such. It's a design by a Chinese artist, which shows an Australian soldier doing a grotesque thing. And it's not drawn, it's done by basically a collage of photos, and I suspect some degree of Photoshop and all that. So it is absolutely grotesque. It is hideous. And by the way, and in addition, if something like that had been published, say in the United States or in Australia, about Chinese soldiers, doing things, on the Indian border or in Central Asia or with Uyghurs or whatever, you can absolutely predict that in China there would be complete fury and indignation. The Chinese take this thing very seriously when it's done to them, and they deliberately did this. They have deliberately done this with Australia, and as I said, it is horrible and it is grotesque. Now, why have they done this? They're actually picking fights quite openly now with Australia. I actually saw on Global Times that there was an editorial. Global Times is the English language version, or it's an English language website published by the People's Daily, which is the Chinese Communist Party's official newspaper. And its title, I'm not going to read the rest of the article, just its title says this: China's goodwill futile with evil Australia. I mean, Australia simply is labeled evil, and that is a Global Times editorial. Now, why is this happening? I think it is because the Chinese are absolutely furious that Australia, which was a country with which they thought they had very strong economic relations, has been siding with the US in some of the issues that have been happening over the last few years. We've been talking about this great divorce between the United States and China. And Australia has to some extent been siding with the US over some of these issues, which is unavoidable because, of course, Australia, must never forget this, is a US ally. It's part of the US Five Eyes intelligence alliance, for example. So one would not expect Australia to take some other view. But what the Chinese are doing is that they're taking out on Australia, which is ultimately, in terms of population, a small country, the anger they actually feel towards the US. And it is extremely ugly. So they don't feel able to talk about the US in this way. So they're taking it out instead on Australia, even though the Australian government has actually, over the last few weeks, been trying to calm things down and has been trying to maintain some kind of a dialogue with Australia, with China. And that shows, to my mind, how angry the Chinese actually are with the US and how far we're heading towards not just a divorce, but an absolute split and a future confrontation between the US and China. And I think any expectation that an incoming Biden administration, if there is a Biden administration, has of repairing relations with China is, frankly, wishful thinking, because given that the mood the Chinese are in, they're going to impose demands on the US, which I suspect even a Biden might struggle to satisfy.
We don't know exactly how much compromising stuff they have on Biden and his family that they may actually resist. They may have some really juicy stuff on Biden and his family. So, Biden may even go along with China's demands, no matter how crazy they are, given the compromise they have on him.
We don't know that, but as I said, the strength of language coming out of China, and it's important to stress, it's the Chinese who are running this. I would add that when the Australians, as I said, complained about this, I'm not going to call it a cartoon, this picture, the Chinese simply doubled down. They've been, criticizing Australia for criticizing China about this picture. And you're perfectly right to say, by the way, that, it's been exposed that the Australian military did some, bad things in Afghanistan. And this is what...
Terrible things.
Terrible things in Afghanistan, absolutely. But we know about those things because the Australians themselves have investigated them and have found them out. Now, I'm not pointing any fingers. I don't know what the Chinese military has been doing. But all I will say is this: if the Chinese military does do bad things in various places, given the kind of setup we have in China, it's most unlikely we would ever find out about them. So, there is that difference, which we must not forget and overlook. And as I said, even if you allow for the fact that the Australian military has done some terrible things in Afghanistan, this picture was grotesque. It is off the scale. It is hideous. And one should never put up a picture like that. The fact that the Chinese are doing it and that they're, as I say, publishing articles about Australia in which they refer to Australia as evil shows how they feel, not just about Australia and about but also about the United States. And if Biden comes along in an accommodating mood, they will eat him for breakfast, given the mood that they are in. They are in a completely uncompromising mood at this time.
Okay. So, number one, Australia, as we said, did some terrible things in Afghanistan. They have to deal with it. I think we both believe in a nation's sovereignty, and it needs to act under its own rule of law, and it needs to deal with these problems that have come up in Afghanistan and these terrible things. But that's up to Australia to deal with, and that's up to the Australian government and the Australian citizens to deal with it. It's very unlike China, given China's past, to put out images like this. Usually China doesn't get involved in international incidences that don't involve it, period. China is a very, very low profile when it comes to stuff like this. They just don't even make statements. They don't get involved. They just completely stay out of it. So the fact that they put this image out is very unlike China, very unlike China. It's actually I'm taken aback by it, but it does tell me one thing. It tells me that they know that if Biden gets into the White House and weasels his way into the White House, it's game over. And I think it's China signaling to the world, we're going to not only have Biden for lunch because we own Biden, and we know they own Biden, and the Democrats know they own Biden, and the Republicans know they own Biden, and Biden knows they own Biden, but they're signaling to the world that they're going to start doing whatever the freaking hell they want to do. That's what it signals to me, because it's very unlike China to put an image like this.
Well, it did, absolutely. Deng Xiaoping's policy, which was followed by China for a long time. Deng Xiaoping was China's paramount leader from the 1970s until his death in the 1990s, and he was the person who, set up the economic reforms which led to China becoming an economic superpower. Anyway, Deng Xiaoping always said that China should rise invisibly. It should never create problems. So China has always avoided this kind of diplomacy. And as you correctly said, there have been horrible things done. There were horrible things done, for example, by the US military in Iraq. One should say that. They were. And China never would have published at that time, during the Iraq war, a cartoon about the US military that, was like this. You're absolutely right. The fact that they are doing this kind of thing now shows that in China, for China, China has crossed a certain line. It is no longer rising invisibly. It's no longer just assertive. It is signaling to the world, but first and foremost to the United States, the kind of mood they're in, the fact that they're going to be utterly uncompromising going forward and uncompromising on every single issue. So, people in the United States should understand this. This is only tangentially about Australia. First and foremost, it's about them.
Yeah, well, people in Australia should understand that too, because I think one thing we're all starting to realize is that Donald Trump was standing in the way of a lot of bad stuff happening. The symbol of Trump, I'm not saying, the word Trump and what he did and what he stood for stood in the way of a lot of bad things taking form. And I think now that we may have Biden weasel his way into the White House, we're starting to see a lot of masks come off and a lot of people and countries, including China, getting very excited about what the next 4 years bring for their own rise to power. It's obvious. That's how I see it. Every country should be worried at this point. Every country should be worried at this point.
I'm sure every country is. Of course, more and more countries, if they don't get a strong response from the US, are going to start saying to themselves, well, the world is dividing, and it looks like China is the more confident power. So that's also the thing to bear in mind, because
Xi Jinping should have dealt with this photo as well. He should have fired. That's what, it's very surprising that I'm not saying he does it in public, but in private, he should have dealt with this. This is a major diplomatic misstep. Major.
Well, can I just say,
it's an embarrassment for China. It is an embarrassment for China.
Well, they are doubling down on it. As I said, they're not only are they not backing off, they are escalating it. As I said, I repeat again, I read again what the Chinese media, the Global Times, which is connected to the Chinese Communist Party, it's their English language, their major English language website, and if you like, their voice. It says China's goodwill futile with evil Australia. That's the kind of language they're using now about Australia.
Very
unlike China. And
unlike Xi Jinping too. Xi Jinping is usually, he has the impression of being a very capable, level-headed leader, like very level-headed, it seems.
He is extremely level-headed and very, very, calm and extremely polite, apparently. But clearly, a political decision has been made at the highest level in Beijing to escalate this row in a way that will signal to Australia, obviously, to the United States primarily, but to the world generally, the mood that China is in, and the fact that, it is in an increasingly assertive mood. It's Chinese media is full of these kind of articles now about Australia. So another one, and this is another headline, Australian PM muddles Australia's own waters with double standard outburst. The Chinese are not backing off, they're escalating. And the fact that they're escalating in this way and breaking with their own traditions and precedents to do so shows, as I said, that they are in a confident and uncompromising mood. And that is something, as I said, that everyone around the world, principally though in the United States, needs to take note of. And perhaps, maybe too late now, but it may be a good question whether Joe Biden is really the right person to deal with the Chinese at this sort of time. But, you know, the political system seems to be intent on, you know, producing Sleepy Joe. I have to say, putting Sleepy Joe up against the Chinese dragon when it's, you know, out, you know, flaming fire and fury all over the place will it'll be an interesting thing to see anyway.
We know what we're going to see. An emboldened and rising China. Not that there's a problem with it, but what may be an aggressive. This I have a problem with. What appears to be an aggressive emboldened China is a problem. And you're going to have a U.S. under Sleepy Joe, which instead of dealing with this issue and this problem and providing a viable competition to China, which is what Trump did, viable competition to China, what you're going to see is a U.S. filled with neocons and neoliberals bombing poor, weak countries in the Middle East, like Yemen, Syria, and Libya. That's what you're going to see from the U.S. That's going to be the dynamic, and it's going to be a complete and utter freaking train wreck.
Absolutely. I remember reading years ago a fascinating book by a French theorist called Emmanuel Todd, who talked about, you know, the US neocons, microaggressions. They attack weak countries, you know, like, you know, Iraq, Libya, wherever, and think that makes them strong, which of course it doesn't. It's you know, you have to stand up if you're a big power and you want to protect yourself and you protect your interests. The people you need to stand up against are the people who are as strong as you. You just waste your time destroying a place like Libya. Well, yes, of course you can do that. Libya is not in any position to fight back against you, but it doesn't increase your power in any significant way. It reduces it if your real adversaries are building themselves up elsewhere. And that, I'm afraid, is what I suspect with Sleepy Joe we're going to see.
Yeah. All right, we'll leave it there. Alexander Mercurst, thank you very much. Guys, like this video, click on the subscribe button down below. Make sure you're still subscribed to us on YouTube, because YouTube is removing subscribers from our channel. They do it all the time, and it's really, really pissing me off at this point. But you can find us on Rumble. We're going to be at 1,000 subscribers on Rumble very soon with your help. So check us out on Rumble. You'll find a link down below. Subscribe to us there. Subscribe to us on BitChute as well, so we can get to 10,000 subscribers on BitChute. We need your help to subscribe. So subscribe to us on those platforms as well. And of course, PayPal, Patreon, Subscribe Star. Please donate to this channel. It really helps us out a lot. And go to the Duran shop, pick up some merchandise. That also helps us out a lot. And also go to Patriotic Legacy. We'll do a quick plug for the Patriot Beacon 3. Best flashlight in the world. Alexander also has one. The contest is a blue camouflage Patriot Beacon. You'll see an image of that right now on your screen. It's a blue camouflage Patriot Beacon. And with the contest, you can also win a Duran t-shirt as well with our logo across the chest there. So you'll see an image for that. Use the code Duran20 and you will get a 20% discount on your purchase from Patriotic Legacy, and you'll automatically be entered into the contest to win the blue camouflage Patriot Beacon 3.
Absolutely. And just to say again, the best flashlight in the world, made in the United States, ships internationally, so you can participate from anywhere in the world. It's the best flashlight in the world. It is beautifully made. It is incredibly strong and rugged. And Alex calls it the Swiss Army knife of flashlights because it can do all sorts of other extraordinary things. You can see that it's got a compass in the handle. It's also solar powered. It's incredibly strong. You can use it as a tool. You can use it as a seatbelt cutter if you have it in your car. You can recharge your smartphone because there's a port there. You can do all sorts of extraordinary and wonderful things. It's the best flashlight in the world, made in the United States by our friends at the Patriotic Legacy. and it ships everywhere in the world. So you must absolutely be a part of this competition and get yourself one. Comes in camouflage blue, I think Alex said. So it's the perfect thing to own. And you must also look us up on our shop. And just to say here, I have one of our own Duran magic mugs, and we've been talking about Australia, and you can see there the Australian flag. So we have lots of flags of many countries on our mugs. You can find them also on our shirts, and we've got also sweatshirts and polo shirts and hoodies and hats and all sorts of great things in our shop. And at a time when our channel is always under pressure from YouTube and others, your support is hugely appreciated. So support us in whatever way you can. Find us on our other platforms. Go and support us on Patreon and Subscribestar, and come to our next broadcast.
All right, Alexander McCurse, thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.